13 finds that the most striking feature about the original position is the veil of ignorance that prevents arbitrary facts about citizens from influencing the agreement among their representatives. We're also that the fact that a citizen of a certain race, class, gender, or is no reason for social institutions to favor or disfavor her. So no party can press for agreement on principles that will arbitrarily favor the particular citizen they represent, because no party knows the specific attributes of the citizen they represent. Since parties are fairly situated, the agreement they reach will be fair to all actual citizens. You value the veil of ignorance because it leads to a society in which principles cannot be tailored to circumstances of the individual or social fortune, thus leading to a natural state of justice in which humans are all represented equally. And then secondly, ideal theory is prerequisite for any action in the non-ideal world. Shelby 24 finds that on Rawlsian view, injustice are conceptualized as deviations from the ideal principles of justice, and injustice is a failure on the part of individuals or social arrangements to satisfy with the ideal principles of justice in the man. Thus, changes in justice presuppose ideals of justice, which particular individuals and instances do so often depart from. Non-ideal theory specifies and justifies the principles which should guide our responses to any deviations from ideal justice. A society in which the principles are fully realized and its institutions and citizens support and comply with institutional rules because these are in accord with their shared conception of justice. It is in this way that ideal theory serves as a guide for non-ideal theory. What ideal theory can provide, however, is evaluative standards for judging when rectification is prima facie called for, namely when culpable violations of principles of justice have caused serious and identifiable harm. The ideal principle, particularly equal liberty principle, helps to explain what was wrong with, say, Jim Crow and apartheid, and why the damage they did to their victims warrants corrective measures, perhaps including reparations. It is not clear how we do it to develop a philosophically adequate, complete theory of how to respond to social injustice without first knowing what makes a social scheme unjust. When dealing with gross injustices such as slavery, we may of course judge correctly with social arrangements simply by observing. So what this is saying basically is that the veiled ignorance allows for society to be is an ideal theory that allows for society to reach a utopian state of justice. However, the veiled ignorance is ideal theory. It is very difficult to actually achieve. However, attempting to approach ideal theory serves as a guide for actual justice in the real world, and that's why you prioritize it in today's debate. On to my sole contention that a wealth tax advances Rawlsian justice. Significant wealth inequality violates Rawls. Napoleon 13 finds that contemporary American society has significant economic inequality. If inequalities present in society have been arrived at only through differences in effort, then it is entirely possible that Rawls would accept the current distribution of wealth. Equality of opportunity does not necessarily view as unjust in uneven distribution of talents or ability to exert effort. If the uneven distribution of talents and efforts results in additional opportunities being made available to the children of the talented, that would violate the principles of Rawlsian equality of opportunity. It is not difficult to see that wealth is allowed to pass unchecked down to future generations. Inequality present in the present original equal opportunity state could grow exponentially. That basically says that if we allow wealth to grow and pass on to future generations, that affords more opportunities to people that are descendants of wealth, which violates Rawlsian justice. And then we solve for that because inheritance taxes are a form of wealth tax. OECD 21 finds that inheritance taxation is a form of wealth taxation, as net wealth taxes and inheritance taxes typically live in a broad range of assets and debts are deductible. John Rawls explains that wealth taxes is the key to reaching a state of justice for all people. Meyer 20 finds that Rawls specified the sufficientary threshold relevant to dividing correctly living people's obligations of justice, conditions needed to establish a just basic structure over time. Rawls distinguishes two stages of societal development in the application of the principles of just saving. Currently living people have a justice-based reason to save for a future principle. This is known as the accumulation stage. Once institutions are securely established, this is known as the steady state phase. Justice does not require people to save for future people, rather it should do what's necessary to allow future people to live under just institutions. Rawls holds that what in the second stage people ought to live in such at least the equivalent of what they receive from previous generations. And inheritance is key to democracy. There's a motivational assumption to ensure prosperity of the next generation. Meyer 20 finds that when the contractors know whether or not the previous generations have saved for them, why should they agree to save for future generations? The principle of just savings is agreed upon as sought to be binding for all previous and future generations. Thus, you affirm. Ready for cross?
Okay. Does justice mean the same thing as equality?
In this scenario, justice is equivalent to equality of opportunity, meaning that everyone has the same opportunity to succeed, not necessarily that everyone will.
Okay, and you say justice is moral?
Justice is moral, I would say, yes.
Okay, and can you kind of like explain how Rawls justice is different from regular justice?
Well, justice is a concept that's difficult to define, so what I'm doing is I'm defining justice through the lens of Rawls, which says that we have to focus on justice as on the basis of social institutions. We have to abolish unjust institutions. And then what we have to do is we have to act behind the veil of ignorance and reach the original position to best achieve an ideal justice.
Okay, and you talk about inheritance tax. So are you only putting in inheritance tax or a full wealth tax?
An inheritance tax It furthers equality of opportunity because wealth is not allowed to be passed on to future generations.
Okay, how do we get equality of opportunity?
Because if wealth is passed down to more generations, that means that those people that receive said wealth have an unequal opportunity to succeed because they have the increased amount of wealth. However, if we get rid of that increased amount of wealth that is passed on to future generations, that means people have a greater opportunity to succeed because no one has an advantage.
So, will I personally gain these advantages?
You'll gain the advantages because say you were going for an interview and then someone else who just inherited $300,000 comes and they have cutting edge technology, they have the sharpest business suit, they have props and other visual aids to make their case. If they don't have that $300,000, that would put you and the other candidate on more equal footing.
Okay, so what if in the real world that people actually have more money than other people, and they inherit that, or the people that are under them inherit that money? So wouldn't that not solve inequality though, since there's different forms of people that have more money, and there's people that have less money, and since they're inheriting that money,
They wouldn't. Under the act, they would not be inheriting that money. That's what an inheritance tax is. They would receive much less of the money that they actually get.
Okay, cool. I was just gonna see the rest of my cross.
All right.
And I'm ready to start the one and see.
With the doctor?
Doctor.
I'm kidding.
I negate resolve. The United States ought to adopt a wealth tax, but first is framing. We look for the most moral world, and the only way to value morality as the highest thought. The term ought indicates a moral obligation. Under that, we take procedures to maximize libertarian ideas, which is defined by Boas 24 as individual liberty, the primary political value. First contention, circumvention. Underfunding of the IRS circumvents the act. They lack capacity for implementation. Mechanic 21. The IRS is stretched thin. The wealthy will undermine any new wealth tax by avoidance and evasion. European wealth taxes have failed due to tax mobility. Enforcement has become weak. Lawmakers declare war on the IRS and have been gutting the agency's budget and ability. The workforce shrank by 34%. Audit rates plummeted. The wealthy have gone unsupervised. The effects of IRS underfunding. Lobosco 24. Cutting IRS funding would hamper the agency's enforcement efforts and could lead to fewer audits of tax cheats. IRS would not be able to collect as much tax revenue. IRS cuts weaken the government's ability to collect taxes, ultimately worsening the budget deficit. Effects of IRS understaffed. Vasilius 21. IRS during the 2019 tax return season dropping money directly into people's bank accounts. More than 160 million Americans received $270 billion worth. The IRS has lost 17,000 enforcement workers and has seen its budget decrease by 20%, which means our Americans are not going to see these benefits in the after world. Second contention is econ. The wealth tax is too expensive. Bastani and Walden Storm 23. Liquidity issues, valuation problems, exemptions, implied tax is associated with substantial costs. Researchers argue valuation errors can inflict serious problems on taxpayers and regulators. They do not know which taxpayers have valued the assets and cannot conduct asset valuations on potential payers, making administration costly. Next, wealth taxes cause massive tax evasion. Campaigns that supercharges shifts to dark, unregulated money that destroys democracy. Wickelinson 19. A wealth tax could harm democracy by subsidizing networks of dark money eating away at the republic. A wealth tax will face powerful, relentless opposition and launch an avoidance arms race that could exacerbate corrupt, dirty money that birthed Trump and is undermining democracy. Tax enforcement is already too lax for the current system, which is less complicated and administratively demanding. The IRS is underfunded and understaffed. A new IRS is unlikely to stand a realistic chance of winning a proliferating race against the wealthiest operators. We risk incentivizing America's mega rich to hide more of the assets in the shadow economy. A wealth tax intended to shore up democracy risks doing the reverse by turbocharging the shadow economy and aligning the interests of the super rich with the despots, who have shaken our democracy from back channels of dark money. We can see this precedent in Europe. Precedent in Europe shows capital flight. Enoch 24. Sweden abolished its wealth tax because capital and high net worth individuals fled. It was responsible for tax avoidance, including capital flight in Norway. Billionaires fled due to the exodus to Switzerland, Sweden. Banks are opening new offices. Spanish taxpayers were changing their tax residence. Wealth taxes caused downward market spirals. Washington Post 21. Tax never required taxes until they realized capital gains in the wealth tax. Rich people would face tax bills when they had little or negative net income, forcing them to sell assets to pay that could set a downward spiral in markets. Private wealth are impossible to assess, which problems explain why most countries repealed the wealth tax. The wealth tax inherently fails. Investment incentivized and implementation. Riedel 23. Businesses stock may need to be liquidated, forcing billionaires to unload investments, which would take a toll on every American's 401k. Tax rates would significantly reduce investment, further erode 401k portfolios, and reduce the tax base. Wealth tax present an administrative nightmare of an annually valuing less liquid assets, tracking wealth over time, and limiting tax avoidance. Tax would dramatically reduce economic growth and wages annually, rising wages. Annual tax bills in the tens of millions of dollars would create liquidity challenges. The Supreme Court would rule it unconstitutional. Wealth taxes were repealed because they were proved to be inexpensive. Reduced and distorted pro-growth investments created liquidity issues, induced families to move, and raised very little revenue. Economic challenges are considered insurmountable by economists. Thus, now moving on to my opponent's case. The app tells you to first uphold the rounds of Wallenstein justice, but you don't listen to them, though, first, because Wallenstein justice makes a fatal mistake by excluding historical injustice from more calculations, inevitably inhibiting justice from actually being achieved for marginalized groups. Society for U.S. Intellectual History 14. Ideal theory because it was necessary for properly doing the really important thing. Non-ideal theory, including the pressing and urging matter of remedying injustice. Ideal theory functions as a form of white flight. You don't want to deal with problems of race and the legacy of white supremacy, so metaphorically, within the discourse of justice, you retreat from any spaces worryingly close to inner cities and move instead to the safe and comfortable white spaces, the gated moral communities of the segregated suburbs from which they become normally invisible. Just as William Morris, we can say that humans deserve justice, and if Rawlsian idea doesn't achieve that, we cannot vote app. Next, we the neg block out ideal theory. The app amounts to ideal theory because it alleviates critique above immediate problems of present society. Frege 14. Philosophy should deal with concrete objects and adopting an empirical attitude. The task is reducing injustices rather than increasing knowledge of legitimacy of institutions. An ideal theory requires a rejection of transcendent standard. Social theorists should limit their role to problem solving. Sailors must rebuild ships on the open sea, never dismantle them, and reconstruct out of the best materials. Contrary to this, theory needs a source normative. The romantic myth of an undistorted state of nature reveals its problematic face. Finally, we move on to the inheritance tax. Online 24 says U.S. government does not impose any inheritance tax, but only 6 states do. One of them is abolishing it next year, and the tax rate varies from 1% to 20%. There are several big exemptions for close relatives and family-owned businesses, and also loopholes that can be exploited to avoid the tax. Therefore, you must vote neg. Thank you.
Okay, so first, I just want, what are you defining a wealth tax as?
What do I define a wealth tax as?
Yeah.
As just taxes on the wealthy.
So taxes on the wealthy. So considering that, I just want to go to your, so first the IRS. So you say that the reason you can't vote app is because the IRS has no way to actually do this, right? Has no way to actually implement the wealth tax, correct?
Well, I'm just saying that with the IRS, they'll be underfunded and understaffed.
Okay, so you're saying that because the IRS is currently underfunded and understaffed, we can't affirm because it's not possible to actually do this. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm just saying that's bad to do that.
So you're saying that it's possible to implement this despite it being understaffed and underfunded.
Yeah, and would you want Americans to receive another $270 billion?
Yes, I would like everyone to receive $270 billion.
Okay,
That sounds like a really good idea.
So sure, we'll just
how capital gains taxes work.
Yes.
The value of a stock is assessed and a tax is implemented on the value of that stock at sale. So we have two examples of wealth being valuated.
Do you have a question, or you just?
I'm asking you a question. So we have two examples of wealth being valuated in an efficient manner. So why is this any different?
Why is this any different?
Yeah, why we're already valuating wealth. Why can we not do it?
Sure,
on the
we'll
app?
just move on to the two contentions I've already given you. Circumventing taxes. IRS will be underfunded and understaffed.
Yeah, but you
Next,
already
with
said-
the
you already-
economy,
you
wealth
already
tax
said
is
that
too
this-
expensive.
you already said-
there would be tax evasion.
You already said that even if it's underfunded, the affirmative can still happen. So why does it matter that it's underfunded?
What do you mean, why does it? Because it's a bad thing, and it doesn't prove for a moral world, which is what I'm trying to argue in today's debate.
Okay, and then what's this last thing about? So you mentioned as an example for tax evasion, you mentioned European examples.
Yeah.
Are you aware that the United States has citizen-based taxation, so that you can't actually flee taxes by going overseas?
Well, it's more of like a wealth tax, not just like.
Yeah, the taxes in the United States are still citizenship-based, unlike in Europe. So people can't actually avoid the tax if they go overseas or they do any of this.
Okay, so then what do you think about let's see. What do you think about the card that I read against your inheritance tax? The online 24.
All that said was that six states already have inheritance
And
tax.
it also
That's
said at the
nothing.
end of it, and also
That's
loopholes
fine.
can be exploited to avoid the tax. Yeah.
Excellent job, gentlemen. Excellent job. How you guys are walking through this distraction is very impressive. That base is wild. All right, and Isa skips on up because she is next. Isa's our only double entry. She's doing two events, Isidore Newman. She's doing poetry you saw earlier. She's also doing original oratory. Original oratory is a 10-minute memorized speech written by the student on any topic in the world. It must be problem and solution. Okay? So make sure that you can identify the problem that she's trying to tackle and make sure she solves that problem. And make sure she maintains your interest throughout the entire piece. As I've always stated, if she loses your interest at any point in time and it's not the base's fault, okay? If it's the piece's fault, okay? Then please make sure you mark that down with feedback. Okay? Knowing what to cut, knowing where to add drama, knowing where to add intensity, knowing where she's losing people is key to do well in a national competition like the one we're going to. Okay? That really, really helps. So don't ever feel like you're being too mean to them, especially my varsity. They deserve it. Okay? So when you're ready, Ashley.
Hey guys, it's me again. Okay. Encore, yeah, exactly. I'm going again. Okay,
Beat the base, I believe in you.
I know. Okay. Okay. I almost said once upon a time.
Last year's oratory, move on, Ashley.
Okay. Lock in. I think at some point in our lives, we've all had to go to the eye doctor. Now, if you wear contacts or glasses like me, you know the process it takes to get or update your prescription and how tedious it can be. You go in, answer some questions about how your vision has been lately, maybe stare at a few letters from across the way, and if you're not so lucky, you'll have small amounts of air puffed into your eyes. But when going to the eye doctor, you're sat in front of a machine that covers your eyes. You then get asked the infamous 1 or 2. So you say 2. Okay, now 3 or 4. And you have to tell them which one is more clear. The doctor is changing the lens that you see from, and you tell them which one better allows you to read the words that are in front of you. Now, there isn't necessarily a wrong answer to this question, it's just simply what's easier for you to see. In many ways, perspective is the same. You choose what's more clear for you to see. But perspectives can become warped or blurred. So today, we're going to look into the different lenses of perspective as we discover how to find our perfect vision that aligns with reality. First, we'll talk about 2 of our oldest philosophers and see how a power struggle between perspectives takes place. Then, we'll talk about harmful echo chambers we can trap ourselves in and how that changes our perspectives. And finally, we'll discover how our perspectives affect how we take in our media. When this is all said and done, we'll finally develop 20/20 vision and discover how we can better align our perspectives to fit into reality. I think, oh. Let's first define perspective. Perspective is a way of thinking about or understanding something. It may be someone says a joke and you take it a certain way and someone else doesn't. Let's take the case of Gypsy Rose Blanchard, for example. When she first got out of prison, everyone was so invested in her life and wanting to turn her into an influencer. That was until the crime scene images of her mother's murder came out and people realized the weight of her crimes. This is how quickly perspectives can change, and more importantly, how perspectives can warp, because perspective does not always align with reality. To find a perfect example of this, we'll have to go all the way back in time to two of the most famous blonde philosophers, Plato and Aristotle. Now, Aristotle was taught by Plato for 20 years, and they still managed to have directly opposing views. What did they have opposing views on? Well, Plato believed that, drumroll please, that's all right, I'll do it by myself, the idea that rhetoric is evil. All debate kids' hearts hurt with that one. But Plato believed that using rhetoric in your speeches or in your debate was inherently evil and bad. He thought that what is essentially tricking or manipulating your audience into believing you by using things such as exaggerated facts and other phenomena such as ethos, pathos, and logos was essentially manipulating your audience and making them believe you and not listening to the content and concepts of what you are trying to say. But if we flip over to one of his most famous students, Aristotle, we see he believed the exact opposite. Rhetoric is amazing. It's a useful tool that helps you better get across your point to your audience and makes you want to believe them. But why is this disagreement on rhetoric so important? Well, essentially, Plato thought that rhetoric manipulated perspective, and Aristotle thought that it enhanced your perspective. Well, who was right? Turns out both of them were right. It wasn't one person was right and one person was wrong. It wasn't a power struggle. It wasn't like Plato just hated his teacher and he wanted to go against directly what he said. When Plato said that it was manipulative, he was right. You are essentially manipulating your audience by forcing them to listen to you and not what you're saying. And it's also helpful because when people listen to you, you're getting your point across. You're making the point you want to. They're listening to you either way. It works. So now we're going to flip over and talk about social media. So when we take in information from social media, there's typically an algorithm. This algorithm helps us go through and it feeds us information and shows us videos that we like. If I like watching people fall down the stairs, the algorithm is going to give me more videos of people falling down the stairs. So what can happen is we essentially get trapped in what is called an echo chamber. An echo chamber is an environment where your beliefs and only your beliefs are coincided, and you never get to experience anything outside of those beliefs. How is this dangerous? Because it's one perspective. You're only getting one side of the story. You're not getting the other side. You don't get to see all of the millions of perspectives we have in the world, and you lose a lot of weight. You lose a lot of important perspectives. You don't get to see other people's stories. You don't get to hear what other people have to say, and that can become dangerous because maybe early in your speech you noticed how I said Plato and Aristotle were both blondes. Turns out they were actually both brunettes. And although that might not seem like a big deal, this is how quickly misinformation can spread online. If you've ever opened the comment section of any video online, you'll see people arguing and fighting about what was said, even if everyone in the situation is wrong. And it's honestly entertaining, but misinformation spreads quickly. And when misinformation, and you're caught in an echo chamber of it, you're only getting misinformation. You're never hearing the right side of the story. This may not seem like a big deal whether Plato and Aristotle were blonde or brunette, but what happens is it affects things like voting. It affects what people think about the COVID-19 pandemic. People get misinformed and then they don't know what to think about certain situations. Misinformation is a disease and it can only be solved by breaking out of these echo chambers and discovering other people's perspectives. By the way, did you catch the 3 lies that I told you throughout my speech? Joke's on you, there were only 2 of them. So now we're going to discuss the media. I think we all remember the cinematic war that was set to take place on the 21st of July in 2023. Barbenheimer. Now, although I originally went to see Barbie, when I eventually got around to watching Oppenheimer, I noticed the reviews, many of which were saying that the story was inaccurate. But wait, Oppenheimer wasn't a documentary. People were saying that the movie failed to notice how unhousing people from New Mexico to use this place as a bomb testing site unhoused thousands of Hispanic and Native American people. And that is an important part of history, but that's not what the movie was about. People got caught up on the dogma of the movie. They were caught up on the little details and refused to see the bigger picture. They didn't get to see where in the last scene you watch Oppenheimer realize he has just created the end of the world. Mutually assured destruction was in his hands, and you got to see the heartbreaking emotions as he realized that that weight was on his shoulders. He caused the end of the world. That is what the movie is about. It's not about the people being unhoused, because that was not a documentary. It was Oppenheimer's unique perspective that the movie aimed to highlight. And when people were caught up in the little information about it and they didn't want to see the bigger picture, they didn't get to witness that. They ignored his perspective completely and got caught up on the little details. This often happens in real life. It's pretty dangerous too, because if we get caught up on one thing someone says, we can miss the entire bigger picture. It happens a lot. You see people nitpick things that happen in political debates because they want to bring the speaker down, but they're missing the big picture of what's actually being said. Again, it's just like misinformation. When you choose to ignore someone else's perspective, you ignore the unique ideas and things that they can bring into the world, and that is dangerous. So, how do we fix our prescription and better align to see ourselves towards reality? Well, the answer is actually quite simple. The answer is us. We must learn to debate, not argue. When people argue, they spew questionable facts at each other and just end up yelling over each other. But when we can learn to debate, look at both sides of the argument, and talk to the person we're disagreeing with respectfully, maybe we will agree. But even if we're not, you're learning to see both sides of the story. And when you can see both sides of the story, even if you still think you're right, you're getting the whole picture. You're getting all of the information, and all of this will help you not become trapped in echo chambers, help you see the other side, and it can prevent you from having a one-sided view of our world. So, I encourage all of you to start a debate with someone today. Should be pretty easy because this room is filled with debate kids. Thank you.
It's been a while since I've heard your oratory, Isaac. Okay, 9:36. Okay, time was 9:36. Excellent job. Haley, you're up. Ladies and gentlemen, we are introducing Haley Chisholm's speech. We are also introducing the last person of the day. Hey, parents, we are finishing way early. Children who don't have parents, little homeless children that are here. Okay, please let your parents know to be here in about 20 minutes. Okay? Okay, that would be nice, but I can use your child labor cleaner. Okay? After this, all the kids, all showcase kids, I want you up on the stage. We're going to do a nice loud round of applause to encourage everybody to send them off to Isidore Newman. And I'm very excited. This last one is called a humorous intern. Okay? We have one at the very beginning. We're starting off strong with Sarah's humorous intern, and we're ending with the humorous intern as well. Okay? And so, 10 minutes theater script. They memorize the 10-minute script, now they act it out. Make sure you follow the story. Any advice you can give on making sure that narrative is clean, making sure that nothing gets forgotten and nothing is kind of skipped over inappropriately. Make sure all the emotions fit with what they're supposed to be doing. And I'm gonna let Haley go ahead when she's ready.
Okay, yeah. Can everybody hear me good? Yes. Okay. Also, there are absolutely no trigger warnings in this because it's going to be funny. However, it gets really loud, and I'm sorry. So, yeah. All right. Okay. Nerd! As most New Yorkers have done, I have given serious and generous thought to the state of my apartment should I get killed during the day. Say, somebody pushes me on the subway tracks, or I get accidentally blown up, or a woman with a headset and a baby carriage, wheels over my big toe, backing me into a lead pipe which lands on my skull. What then? I mean, after the ambulance, the hospital, the funeral, the trays of cheese cubes, a boiled toothpicks, back in the apartment I never should have left. My bed has gone unmade, and the dishes unwashed, and the day that I get shot in a bodega, buying cigarettes naturally, will in all likelihood be the day before Laundry Sunday, and the day after I decided to clean out my closet, got bored halfway through, and opted to watch sitcoms in my prom dress instead. I pictured my loved ones coming to my apartment to collect my things, and I had only hoped that they would find it lived in. Messy bras drawing on a shower curtain rod, muddy sneakers by the front door, but that's never gonna happen. Even my dust balls have a manifest destiny that drive them far beyond the ruffle of the same name. I like to picture these loved ones persisting in their devotion to dead me no matter what. I mean, they would literally be blinded by grief, too upset, you know, putting sweaters in boxes to notice that I hadn't dry cleaned them in a year. That is, until one of them made his or her way into the kitchen. Hey, where you going, sweetheart? My father would ask. Packing up her bedroom's much too painful, my mother would say, wailing. I'm gonna start on the kitchen. This is the part I dread. This is the part where my mother would make her way into the kitchen, open up the drawer beneath the sink, only to discover my stash of plastic toy ponies. Everyone is afraid of something, whether it be a job interview coming up, the thought of a tornado sweeping your house away, or simply a monster under the bed. And everyone has their own secrets and things they're afraid to admit. So today, I present to you a story about a grown woman with a hidden My Little Pony collection, who's seriously afraid of death. But not only death, but total humiliation. She is so afraid someone will find her hidden pony collection when she dies. So what does she do? She panics, of course. This is The Pony Problem by Sloane Crosley. There are about 7 of them in there. Correction, one's a Pegasus, blue, with ice skates. The rest vary in size, texture, and realism. Some have rhinestone eyes, some have brown felt. And if they come in plastic and cardboard packaging, they shall remain unopened, as if they will appreciate like Star Wars figurines. Perhaps they're not the dirtiest of dirty secrets, but they're about as high as one can get on the oddity scale without a ringer, like toenail clippings. I'm not exactly sure how the ponies happened though I have an inkling. Dinner's good, am I right? I'll ask. I guess so. So, can I get you anything? I'll ask, getting up from the dinner table. Coffee, tea, a pony, People rarely laugh at this, especially if they've heard it before. This party is supposed to be fun. A friend will say, really? Will there be pony rides? It's a nervous tick, and a cheap joke, cheapened further by the frequency with which I use it. But for that same exact reason, it is impossible to weed out of my speech. There are these little elements in a person's life, these tiny itty-bitty fibers that become tangled with our personality. Sometimes it's a patent phrase, sometimes it's a perfume, sometimes it's a wristwatch. For me, it's the constant referencing of ponies. I don't even like ponies. Just a few summers ago at camp, I rode this chronically dehydrated pony named Brandy, who just jolt down to lick the grass outside. I do, however, like ponies in the abstract. Who doesn't? I mean, it's like those animated insect movies. Sure, the baby roach on screen with the CGI lashes and the cute little wings is cute on screen, but imagine 50 of her real life counterparts living in your oven. And that's precisely the fact ponies clomp their way into my speech, abstractly. Hey, I got something for you. A guy will say on our first date, oh my god, is it a pony? What? No, it's never really a pony. It's usually a movie ticket, his cell phone number, or a slobbery tongue kiss off. But by our second date, if I ask again, I'm pretty sure I'm getting a pony. And thus, the whole to admit, almost every single guy I have ever dated has unwittingly made a contribution to the stable. For example, the retro pony from the 50s was from the most thoughtful guy I've ever known. The one with the glitter horseshoe is from a boy who just later turned out to be gay. But the one with the rainbow haunches, that's from a dealer. Not a pot dealer, a car dealer. He's pretty cool, I guess. But the one with the price sticker stuck on the haunch? Oh, the one with the price sticker stuck on the haunch is from a narcissist. So impressed with his damn gift, he forgot to take the sticker off the back. Ah! And it's so embarrassing to admit. It is so disgustingly embarrassing to admit. I mean, I picture somebody coming to my apartments, if I did hypothetically die, to collect my things. I don't know, somebody like my grandpa coming to find my stuff.
Let me in, you! Let me in!
My mother would answer the door, sobbing. Have you heard the news, Dad? She's dead.
What? You ain't my granddaughter, you're my real daughter. Get out the way!
My grandpa would make his way into the kitchen, and he'd say something pink and sparkling sticking out the drawer.
Oh, this looks like candy. What's this?
He'd open up the drawer.
Oh! Oh! Ew! What is this? My granddaughter's a brony. Oh!
How would my grandpa know what a brony is? I mean, he just discovered YouTube 3 months ago. I mean, that's like impossible, right? It's so scary to think about. I think about somebody, like my father, coming in to collect my things, of course. Be like,
Up there, let me in the house. I'm hungry as well.
come in. I texted you about this. Have you heard what happened to her? My mother would answer the door, saying,
Up, get out the way. Wait! You ain't my daughter. You're my wife. Move out the way. I'm hungry. Get out the way.
Yup. Oh, what's in this kitchen here? My father would make his way into the kitchen, and he would spot the same exact shiny piece of pink hair.
Oh, yup. Hey, what's this in this drawer right there? That's kind of strange. Oh, no. What in tarnation is this? What in tarnation? I ain't raised no daughter to be a My Little Pony loving sister.
She's a grown woman loving My Little Pony. That's nasty. Okay, I have to do something. I mean, statistically speaking, my chances of getting hit in the head with a lead pipe are increasing every single time I lock the door behind me. But what to do? I mean, every time I go to throw the ponies away, I feel like a mother. I mean, about to slap her child for the first time. To cross a line she never intended to cross. Oh, she's spitting mad. The arm flies up and it never comes down. So what then? I mean, I have to get rid of them somehow. I can't just shove them behind the radiator, they'd melt. And I can't just melt them for glue like their real life counterparts once were. That's gross. I have to do something. So, I do. I go to the kitchen and I get a black plastic bag. I go up to the drawer and I need to start dumping the ponies in. But I open it. And I can't do it! Oh my god, these ponies are a part of me. I mean, throwing them away would be throwing away a part of me. I have to do it. So I go up to the drawer and carelessly dump them all in the drawer. They put the drawer back. Just casually, I tie up the bag, sling it around my arms, and sneakily, like the Hamburglar, creep out of my house. Casually, I'll get onto the subway. Bing! Then, just as casually, I'll kick it beneath my feet. And I'll wait for my stop. Bing! Then, casually, I'll leave the bag on public transport on the way to the heart of Brooklyn. The ponies are gone. But when the door's shut, I realize what I have done. I mean, in my attempt to remove the ponies from my life, I've given some poor girl at the end of the subway a reason to think she might not make it home in time. I mean, an unmarked abandoned package on public transport is kind of creepy, but that's not my problem. I mean, I've created the ponies, and I've uncreated them. And now, I'm feeling great. Sneaky, great, and nostalgic, free. Thank you.
Excellent job. Time of 10 minutes and 11 seconds. All
the master of fumbling. They call me the master of fumbling. Oh, you're the master. Thank you. Don't quit, because you're my competition.
Alright, is that all 14 of my kiddos?
Let's pretend like